Welcome to the Bowden Blitz. I'm Joe Lisi, joined by former National Coach of the Year and current college football analyst Terry Bowden. Coach, the SEC is here. Week number 1 is on the horizon. Great games from start to finish. And oh, by the way, 2 teams in Texas and Oklahoma that make their way to the SEC this year.
I mean, it's a monster of a conference. It just got more of a monster. They're bigger. They're tougher. The schedules are unbelievable. The amount of competition now in the SEC alone, it's amazing what those teams have to play to get through that conference and maybe hit the conference championship game or the National Football Playoffs.
Before we get to the Week 1 slate, Texas is booked across multiple sports books with the Georgia Bulldogs to basically compete for an SEC championship. We saw Texas knock off Alabama as a 6.5-point underdog last year in Tuscaloosa. I've said it time and time again, you can knock off maybe Alabama or another SEC team in terms of a one-game scenario, but how realistic is it for Texas to potentially go undefeated or an 11-1 season playing the week-to-week gauntlet within the SEC?
You know, 11-1 to me is a lot different than 12-0. It's just tougher to get them all in there. And if you don't have a fumble along the way, I could see Texas winning 11 games. He's got the talent. And again, another Nick Saban protege who learns the tricks of the trade, how to recruit, how to use the portal, how to bring a staff together. And I don't know that I've got Texas over Georgia. I don't when I look at the conference, but I've got right there number 2 because they've got great talent. And if they can start playing defense like Georgia plays defense, I think that'll get them right back in the hunt for everything.
You talk about that front 7 for Texas last year. They held opposing offenses to 82 rushing yards per game, 2.8 yards per rush. If they could duplicate that in 2024, they might be there. Let's not forget they do square off against the top-ranked Georgia Bulldogs in early October in Austin. What about Oklahoma? Because their expectations this year are a little bit tempered. 7.5 win total this year for Brett Venables and the crew. They lost last year in the bowl game against Arizona to Noah Fafita. Jackson Arnold takes over for Dylan Gabriel. What are your expectations, big picture, about Brett Venables and the Oklahoma Sooners this year?
You know, Joe, I've been around football long enough to remember what Oklahoma Sooners are. I mean, it's a championship program, one of the elite programs in the country. They come to the SEC, and we don't even talk about them. We don't talk about them being in the top 5, top 7, and they very well could be. They're playing that kind of footballs. I mean, Brian Venables, who went there, kind of got his feet wet the first year or two. Now he's ready to go. He won double-digit victories, and I think we can't knock out the fact that Oklahoma may shock everybody, including me, because they're a team that has such great tradition. They know what winning's all about at Oklahoma.
Now, the biggest thing I think when you look at both teams is defense, right? Texas was a little bit more physical in terms of the front 7. Do you feel Venables could get back to the defense the way he did in terms of defensive coordinators with his days at Dabo Swinney and Clemson?
He won't be satisfied until he gets back exactly back where Brett used to be when he was at Clemson. And you know what he did? He went out and hired a new defensive coordinator named Zach Alley. Zach Alley was a student assistant for Brett Venables at Clemson for 4 years, then a GA for 2 years, and an analyst for 2 years. I hired him as my defensive coordinator at ULM because he's young and he had not been a coordinator before, and I could get him for a group of 5 price. But in 3 years, he's gone from me to Rich Rodriguez at Jacksonville State, and now he's at Oklahoma. But the big thing is he knows one type of defense. He knows one style. That's the Brent Venables style of defense. He's not going to go in there and try to put something else in. I think what Brent did was hired him somebody that will run a defense like he would run it. And if you're going to be great at Oklahoma, you want to have a Brent Venables defense, and that's exactly what they're going to get from Zach Alley.
We'll see how it plays out in regards to the conference schedule for both the Longhorns and Sooners respectively. But we have huge matchups. It starts on Saturday afternoon in the Georgia Dome. Top-ranked Georgia Bulldogs and Kirby Smart take off and kick off their 2024 campaign against a team they know fairly well in Clemson and Dabo Swinney. These teams squared off just a few years ago. Georgia got the victory 10-7, but something tells me this game might be a little bit closer than people think on Saturday afternoon.
And I think it will be. I think Clemson has been looking forward to this game. They know what this game means. They know what people think of Georgia, and they know how good Georgia is. But Clemson's not that far off. Now, they've fallen a little bit in the last couple of years, but that's right down the road right there. And I think Clemson will come ready to play. I know they've been gearing up for it all off season, preparing for this game, because this game could get that momentum back, because they've lost momentum the last couple of years with their one-loss record. And a big one like this could mean everything to them. If they go out there and just play smart, don't turn the ball over or give up big plays, stay in this game till the second half, and then let the momentum turn to them, or the nerves, the shaky. When you're supposed to win and you get to that third quarter to fourth quarter and you're not winning by enough, it begins to work against you. So that's the kind of game plan I think Clemson has to have. It's about the only way I think they'll find a way to win this game.
We'll talk about Clemson. Clemson started very slow. They lose on the road week number 1 as a double-digit favorite to Mike Elko and Duke. Riley Leonard was the quarterback in terms of that matchup. They lost 4 conference games, Coach, for the first time since prior to 2014. And more importantly, their quarterback, Cade Klubnik, struggled in big matchups. When you look at this Clemson team, they did win 5 games down the stretch against teams like Notre Dame and Kentucky in the bowl game. They won those games by an average margin of victory of 10.6 points per game. But the last time the Clemson Tigers knocked off the Georgia Bulldogs was back in 2013. You're talking about a Georgia team that averaged 40 points per game and is led by Heisman Trophy frontrunner Carson Beck. Beck threw for over 3,900 passing yards, 24 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. How important is it for Georgia and Carson Beck to get the passing attack going on Saturday afternoon?
Oh, I think when you play teams the caliber of Clemson, you've got to mix your game up. I know eventually Georgia's going to run the football, and they're going to want to run the football, and that's what makes them separate from a lot of other teams. But I think you have to combine it with the running game, the passing game early on, because the other team knows if they can just stop the run, they're going to win. But if they can overload the box, people can put so many people up there, it doesn't make sense to run the ball early. So you want to throw it just enough early in the game to get the defense backing up, and now you can get to what you want to do is run the football. But you can't go out there and say, I'm going to run no matter what, because they can put 9, 10 people close to the box, and they can tackle the tackler with unblocked defenders. They can make tackles, and you can't do that. So I think it's very important Carson Beck mixes in his throws. He doesn't have the tight end he had last year, but he's got some great younger ones. But he's got to mix in the throws with the passes early to make sure he keeps Clemson off balance.
And you look at Trevor Etienne that transfers in from Florida. Etienne last year with the Gators averaged 5.7 yards per carry, 8 rushing touchdowns. This is a Georgia offense last year, Coach, that pounded the rock for 191 yards per game. They had well over 450 total yards of offense, and the number 1 ranked third down offense with LSU and Jaden Daniels. How important is it to win third downs on Saturday?
Well, you win third downs by having short yardage third downs. You don't want to be in predictable passing situations. So when you hit that 3rd 5, 3rd 6, maybe 3rd and 7 mark, now you're going to a situation where they know you're going to pass. So the most important part of third down is first down. You've got to make yardage on first down to give yourself choices to put the defense in an unpredictable situation, or put yourself in an unpredictable situation that the defense has to handle. So the key to third down to me has always been first down. What are you going to do first down wise to mix it up to make sure you've got short yardage third down to keep that average up?
Georgia's the front runner right now to win the national championship with Ohio State, coached at 3-1 to win the national championship, -600 to make the college football playoff. I think this is going to be a tough ball game. I think on Saturday Georgia does win, but Clemson does cover the 13.5-point number. I think the pressure on Dabo, the 6 months of preparation, should benefit the Clemson Tigers in this matchup. How do you see it playing out?
Well, I'm with you. I think Clemson keeps this close and beats the spread. But I have to wonder, after 2 seasons like they've had, have those guys deep down at Clemson lost a little of that swagger, lost a little bit of that confidence? Because when you play Georgia, you better be confident. You better have some swagger, or they'll run all over you. So I think it's going to be a close ball game. I think Clemson's going to keep it close, but I really think probably Georgia has got too much talent to lose in this game.
We'll see how that game plays out on Saturday. Another top battle takes place in College Station. You have Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame on the road to square off against Texas A&M and their new head coach, Mike Elko. Connor Wegman back for the Aggies. He suffered an ACL last year, was injured for much of the second half of the season. Now this offense in regards to Texas A&M has a lot of optimism. Le'Veon Moss leads the rushing attack. How do you see this game playing out on Saturday night? Because expectations are through the roof in College Station.
Yeah, and they need to be, because I think Texas A&M is going to have an outstanding year this year, because when they got the new head coach, Mike Elko, Jimbo Fisher didn't leave him no players. They've got some outstanding players. They had a bad luck place there where they didn't play well, but he's got great players, and I consider Mike Elko one of the best defensive minds in the business. He'll bring that defense. You know, his defense at Duke was the number one scoring defense in the ACC, and that's not typical of a team like Duke without the players, but he comes with great players at Texas A&M, and I think that defense is going to change everything. And I can see Texas A&M. I think they're going to beat Notre Dame outright in this game, and it's going to be a tight game because Notre Dame's got a really good team. But I don't think you go into College Station with the players that Mike Elko's got and the way he can scheme a defense and what they can do. I think you're going to see Texas A&M use that defense to stop Notre Dame.
Well, we'll see how this game plays out, because I'm going to throw some statistics at you. Marcus Freeman, coach, over the past couple of years in regards to Notre Dame, 10-4 straight up on the road or on a neutral field. He gets the benefit of Duke quarterback Riley Leonard coming over. He's a mobile quarterback, a lot more mobile than Sam Hartman was last year. And you look at Sam Hartman's performance. He was brought in to be the savior for the program. Only had 2 games last year where he threw for over 300. Struggled in the game in the loss to Ohio State. What do you expect in regards to that? Because Texas A&M, from a defensive perspective, needs to limit Riley Leonard, especially on the perimeter.
Well, let me say this about Riley Leonard. He was the coach. He was the quarterback at Duke. Who was the head coach at Duke? Mike Elko. He knows. He knows exactly what he's going to do. Rolls out to the right. He can't throw to this side. He knows what his habits are. He knows what he likes to do. That's another big advantage for Coach Elko on the defense, of picking up, knowing what the quarterback's going to do, and that's going to go to their advantage, because when you practice against a guy every day and scrimmage against him every day, you get a good feel for all their mannerisms, and that's another advantage, I think, for Texas A&M.
Yeah, we'll see how this game plays out. Rushing attack is going to be very important for Texas A&M. They only average 136 rushing yards per game. They did throw for over 270 against opposing defenses. And the biggest thing for me is, even though from a statistical standpoint, Connor Wedman was effective, completed 68% of his passes, I felt like against better SEC competition, he struggled a bit. I think it's very critical for Notre Dame playing on the road to score first, take that crowd out of the matchup. You look at the total right now in regards to College Station. This is a low total, 46.5, 46s across multiple books. It's a 2.5-point spread in regards to Texas A&M. They started out in the offseason, coaches, 2.5-point dogs against Riley Leonard. I think it comes down to the fourth quarter. I think in the end, Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame strike the upset as an underdog, 24-20.
You know, I like quarterback Wigman. I think he's going to be a fine quarterback in their system. They're going to be much more of a team that wins with great defense and don't make mistakes, manage your offense well. They've got some hosses on both sides. Their interior line on both sides of the ball are very strong. I still see Texas A&M at home in that, because that crowd there, you mentioned a good point. Notre Dame could score first and quieten that crowd, because the 12th man up there, everything they do is making noise, and it's an amazing place to coach and play. And so I think Notre Dame will not be able to win that game. I like it be close, but I like Texas A&M outright.
All right, we'll see how that plays out. 7:30 kick in College Station Saturday night. A huge battle, coach, takes place in regards to Sunday night. Sunday night in Las Vegas, you got LSU, you got USC. Brian Kelly in year number 3 trying to make the college football playoff. He knocked off Nick Saban in year number 1. Last year, Jaden Daniels gets hurt, and Lincoln Riley was supposed to make the college football playoff with this year's number 1 draft pick, Caleb Williams. They didn't win a Pac-12 championship, and now it's Miller Moss squaring off against Garrett Nussmeier. LSU 4.5-point favorites Sunday night in Las Vegas. Huge battle for both teams.
This is going to be a great matchup this early in the season. You know, I love seeing these non-conference games where best teams in the country play other best teams in the country. I hope we don't miss that as these conferences get bigger and people don't want to do that. These kind of games really make football what it's all about. LSU probably wishes it was playing a night game at home because they don't lose. I mean, even Brian Kelly's 11-0 playing night games at home. But Vegas will be a little different. But you know what? I think LSU's got a team. They've got a quarterback, Garrett Nussmeier, who's pretty dead gum good, and I think he's going to be the next special quarterback quarterback. He's not going to be at all like the quarterback they had last year, because he's going to be more like a Joe Burrows. He's going to be able to dump it off, run some, but he's a son of a quarterback coach, the son of an NFL coach, and he's got great football IQ, and so he'll do a great job behind one of the best offensive lines in the country. Clearly, to me, I think the best offensive line in the SEC.
Yeah, Will Campbell came out and said this week, he said, we know exactly what to expect in regards to Vegas. It's going to be a fist fight. So that's what LSU wants to do, right? They want to play bully ball, and we'll see if they can run the football effectively. You get John Emery, a sixth-year senior that comes back for the LSU Tigers. Caleb Jackson, a dynamic threat in regards to not just running the football, but catching the football out of the backfield. And then number 18, Josh Williams. He'll wear number 18 along with defensive linebacker Greg Penn. Josh Williams, a very blue-collar player, so I think it's important for LSU to run the football on a very suspect USC front seven, right? That's been the MO for Lincoln Riley throughout his tenure, not just in Oklahoma, coach, but in the early part in regards to USC, with the fact that they couldn't stop the run with their former defensive coordinator, Alex Grinch. They're going to need a much better effort Sunday night in Las Vegas.
Yeah, Lincoln Riley, until they play great defense, because when you have a coach that's known for his dynamic offense, and the number of plays and the amount of points you score are so important to their system, I think it takes away from the defensive part of the game. And until the USC gets that defense like the defense of old, I think they'll score a lot of points. Then they'll come out 2 or 3 games a year like last year and score 20 or 21 points with that same offense. Now, that's what I kind of see LSU doing. LSU, Blake Baker, the new defensive coordinator. I keep mentioning coordinators because I think they make all the difference. Blake Baker was the coordinator at Missouri. He's one of the best coordinators in the country. He'll take those same defensive players, and put them in better positions to be successful. Harold Perkins, you mentioned him. He'll be blitzing from the outside. He'll be playing in the inside. And I think that defensive coordinator will be able to help do a great job against USC. The question is, can USC play good enough defense to hold down LSU?
Well, that's the thing, too. You look at USC's defense. They get a new defensive coordinator, Lynn, that comes over from UCLA. And you mentioned Baker coming over as well. How quick can both of these coordinators, get these players to adjust to their scheme? Because I've said it time and time again, they have to understand, the coordinators do, how these players respond in certain game situations, right? And then their predecessors might have been more or less aggressive in regards to certain situations, right? You have 2 defensive coordinators taking over. Maybe the former defensive coordinator wanted a blitz on first down, or maybe he wanted to play zone. How important is it for these coordinators to understand that talent in game situations, not just practice situations?
Oh, there's no question. The coordinators play a big part in how much better the defense is going to play. But again, when your head coach is a play caller and he focuses on offense so much, you got to make sure that doesn't override the what you have, the preparation that you have defensively, and the game plan that you're going to have differently, because it can change with the high productive offense. Or an offense doesn't care if it comes off the field quickly sometimes, doesn't care if it runs the clock sometimes, and you get in trouble defensively of getting used to not having to play good against some teams because you're scoring so many points, and then not being able to play well enough against other teams. And so I think it's a lot more easier if, like, a Brian Kelly does not call plays, does not get himself involved with the actual game plan anymore. Lincoln Riley is going to be an offensive coach, and I think Blake Baker has a chance to really go in there and probably have a bigger impact with what they're doing there, because I think the offense will play well with the defense.
It's an amazing statistic. You talk about Brian Kelly dating back since 2017, his days in Notre Dame. He's 30-14 on the road or on a neutral field site, right? That's a 681% winning percentage, but he's lost back-to-back games against Florida State coming right out of the gate. In regards to that, how important is it for him to get this victory on Sunday night?
Yeah, I think he's had 4 straight opening season losses at LSU, and it's just good opponents. He's playing some good opponents, and he's playing another one. But this one's awful important to us, because I think, and I have got LSU sneaking into the playoff at the end of the year, but they must beat Southern Cal to do that. They must come out ready to play in the first game. Now, you take Brian Kelly. He has won double digits the last 7 years, and there's not many coaches in the country that have won double digits 7 years in a row. And every third year, you mentioned it, Joe, every third year he's had a classic season. He's really kind of gotten better and had a special year. So I really see them playing really well this year. But if they can beat Southern Cal, if they can come out here and just win this game, they'll be 5-0 going into Ole Miss. And that's where it's going to come down to the SEC right there.
And before we transition, Coach, the last thing I want to ask is Miller Moss and Garrett Nussmeier both played in the bowl game. They both got the victories over Louisville and last year over Wisconsin. How important was it for them, both of those quarterbacks, to get that bowl experience prior to week number 1?
Oh, I think it's huge because not only do you have confidence in yourself, but your teammates do. You go into spring ball now, the teammates believe in you, and they've got to believe in the quarterback, and he's got to be their man. And in this case, in both situations, the quarterback is clearly their man. They want him to be the quarterback, and they're both going to have great years. Lincoln Riley, because whoever plays quarterback for him is going to have good numbers. That's almost always going to happen. LSU probably won't have the numbers. In fact, they won the Heisman Trophy. Phil's won the Heisman Trophy because they had to score so much to score more points than the other team last year. So I think it's going to be a much more of a basic manage the offense for LSU. But I think both these quarterbacks are going to be good throughout the season.
We'll see how it plays out on Sunday night. Times are changing, Coach. The mad scientist Nick Saban retired last year after the semifinal playoff loss to Michigan. Now it's Kalen DeBoer and the Alabama team that has a 9.5 win total taking on Western Kentucky in terms of week number 1. You look at Alabama. Since 2016, they're 52-2 straight up at home in Bryant-Denny. The only 2 losses came last year against Texas and Quinn Ewers, and back in 2019 against Joe Burrow and LSU. Any shot that TJ Finley and Western Kentucky can knock off Kalen DeBoer in game number 1 in Tuscaloosa?
They may keep it closer than 31, but they're not going to knock them off. There's so much separation in these two teams. It's just no way, I believe, especially with how much is riding on the line. First impression that DeBoer wants to make. I think Alabama's not get a lot of the props that they've liked in the last time. They're always been picked 4th or 5th. They're outside the top 4. So I think you're going to see a great Alabama team play a team that's going to have a pretty good pocketbook check when they get through with the game in Western Kentucky.
Yeah, what's amazing, Coach, is you look at the margin of victory for Alabama, right? Back in 22, they won their home games against FBS opponents by an average margin of victory of 35.5 points per game. Last year, it dipped down to 18.8 points per game. They were 6-1 at home overall. But let's not forget they were 9-0 in the SEC. They won those games by an average margin of victory of 12 points per game. They get the benefit of their quarterback, Jalen Milroe, that does come back. They lose, however, Isaiah Bond and Caleb Downs to the transfer portal, and that offensive line needs to get better. They allowed 49 total sacks and, more importantly, only rushed for 4.3 yards per carry. How important is it to the success of Alabama that offensive line finds continuity this year?
Yeah, they'll find it. They'll need to find it early in this game, and it really needs to show against Western Kentucky because if it's there, it'll easily be there against Western Kentucky.
Coach and I will be with you all season long. We're just getting started on the Bowden Blitz. Have a great weekend, everyone. We'll see you next week.